Yeah, thank you very much, Isa. So, as you said, it's definitely not agent-based modeling I'm going to present. So, it's more a stochastic approach. So, that means that it's more a static modeling approach. And actually, we wanted to have a look at the environmental preferences of modern humans and Neanderthals. And therefore, we used kind of different modeling approaches in terms of stochastic modeling means terrain analysis as well as models dealing with boosted regression trees as well as maximum entropy models. So my co-author in this paper is Michael Boros. He is also from the Heidelberg Academy of Sciences. We are both working in a project entitled The Role of Culture in Early Expansion of Humans, and the acronym is ROCKY. So the project itself is dealing with expansions. It's not only spatial expansions, as you see over here, so expansions of habitats, of organisms or artifacts, but we are also dealing with expansions of the behavioral potential. So that means of the biological, cognitive, and cultural expansions. In this talk, I'm mainly focusing on the habitat of early hominins, so of the anatomical modern humans as well as the Neanderthals, and especially on the site preferences. However, as you see in the project, we have also other components dealing with the hominins itself, with the cultural aspects. But one major issue in the project is the integration of all this information, developing theories, testing these theories with models, and these models naturally are based on data that we prepared also with GIS methods. So actually our time frame is around about 3 million BP to 20,000 BP, and the aims of this research is first of all the collection, identification and localization of Neanderthal and anatomical modern human sites. So that means in this case we want to focus on a time frame of about 200,000 BP to 30,000 BP. With the approach, we want to characterize the paleo environment, and what we want to get out of it is the site selection criteria of these early hominins, so of the Neanderthals and the anatomical modern humans, and to have a look at if there are similarities in these site selection criteria. This we would like to do with modeling and also prediction of these criteria, and we want to test naturally also the performance of the models we developed. So here we have the Neanderthal time slices. So Neanderthals in this case have been classified in 3 different categories. So we have the pre-Neanderthals, which are around about 500,000 to 200,000 BP. We have the early Neanderthals from 200,000 to 115,000 BP. And we have the classic Neanderthals from 150,000 to around about 30,000 BP. However, also the modern humans are more or less appearing at the same time period. So we have, for example, Blombos here at 75,000 BP, or Herto at 160,000 BP, or even Homo Kivish in Ethiopia at 195,000 BP. So that means early hominids, in this case the Neanderthals, the classic and the early Neanderthals, as well as the modern humans, appear at the same time period. So in our analysis, we are focusing especially on the time frame classic Neanderthals and early Neanderthals, so 200,000 till around about 30,000 BP. So this is the Neanderthal fossil record, and in this analysis we are especially focusing on the fossil record, so only sites where we have fossil appearances. We have collected around about 190 sites. We checked in the XY coordinates, and the geographic accuracy is less than 50 meters. Actually, the three classes of Neanderthals consist in 146 cases for classical Neanderthals, 32 sites of early Neanderthals, and the pre-Neanderthals are just 11 cases. So the pre-Neanderthal class cannot be used for the statistical analysis because we have far too less information for doing proper statistical analysis. On the right-hand side, you see the spatial distribution of the different Neanderthal classes around about Europe, and as we have seen in previous presentations, also here towards the east, so the distribution of the Neanderthal habitats. Then we have collected also sites of the anatomical modern humans. Also over here, we focused on the fossil record. Actually, now we have collected 35 sites, and we started with these 35 sites to do the statistical analysis. However, in future we will increase the number when we insert new information into our database. So the hypotheses behind the approach are that the Neanderthals and modern human site selection is based on environmental criteria. So that means that we can use functional environmental relationships to assess the criteria of site selection. Then a lot of environmental information and information on process dynamics can be derived from topography. So one of the main hypotheses is that topography is conservative, and that means that the present-day topography reflects elements and processes of the paleo landscape. Neanderthal and modern human find locations show specific characteristics in their near surrounding, so that is also the hypothesis. In this case, we have a spatial resolution of our analysis of about 6.25 hectares. Taking into account these hypotheses, we can use stochastic approaches to predict the potential site selection criteria of Neanderthals and modern humans. So the modeling approach we used, I already said at the beginning, it's MaxEnt, so maximum entropy method, and on the other hand, the TreeNet approach, which is kind of classification regression-free method, whereas the MaxEnt is based on statistical mechanics. The advantage of MaxEnt is that it can use presence-only data, whereas the TreeNet or boosted regression tree approach, as it is also called, it works with classified variables. So in this case, for example, the classified Neanderthal variables, in this case the classic and the early Neanderthals, can be assessed with the TreeNet approach. The validation of these models is done with this so-called ROC integral, receiver operator curve integral, or the area under curve. I will show later on. So this is a measure of the performance of the model. And in the end, we get also the variable importances. So that is really interesting because with the variable importance, we can get also information about the different site selection criteria and which of these are more preferred than others. So here again, diagram showing the approach. So we have a target variable. In this case, the Neanderthals classes, or the anatomical modern humans. On the other hand, we have the predictor variables based on topography, and from topography we derive information also describing hydrological, climate, vegetation, or strategic issues. So then this is assessed with the data mining approach, and as I said, we have used two different models, the maximum inclusive regression trees. From this approach, we get a model that explains the target variable by the combination of the environmental features. And once we know the combination of different predictor variables that are describing the target variable, we can use this information also to do a spatial prediction. So I already presented last year the different predictor variables that we classified in three different classes. So there are the predictor variables that are representing water-related processes. There are topographic indices representing climate-related aspects, and there are topographic indices that are representing strategic aspects. So we can classify the 61 predictor variables we derived from the digital elevation model, in this case the SLTM, which we reported to a resolution of 250 meter, into these three different classes representing different environmental conditions. First we use then the Maxent and the boosted regression tree model, and here the results of the model performance of the Maxent model. Here on the left-hand side you have the early Neanderthals, on the right-hand side you have the classic Neanderthals, and what you see over here is the receiver operator curve integral. So if the curve is passing through the upper left corner of this diagram, we have an excellent model. So our integral under the curve is about 1. As you see over here, if AOC values exceeding 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, we have acceptable, excellent, or outstanding results. So in this case, the Maxent model yields a rough integral of 0.9, which means we have an excellent, outstanding model performance. For the classic Neanderthals, it's a little bit less, and then we have 0.7 for as a area on the curve, rock curve integral. So means the models are performing quite well. However, you have to have a look also at the test data. So you should not only have a look at the training data, but also the test data. And here you see that model performance for the early Neanderthals is 0.69. It's not really good. And for the classic Neanderthals, it's even worse. However, we use then the tree-net approach, and here, as you can see, the model performance is much better. So in the upper part, we have the train data with 0.99, so it's outstanding for both for early Neanderthals and classic Neanderthals. But also the test data is quite good, especially for the early Neanderthals, we have 0.8, and for the classic Neanderthals, 0.67. So acceptable as a model performance. So in the end, we use then the model results to predict also the Neanderthal site probability. And here you have a map showing the classic Neanderthal probability. So in green, our probability is higher than 50%, in red, more than 75%. And you see the distribution around Europe. So we have quite high probabilities, especially in the higher areas, so in the Alps, southern France, around the Pyrenees, but also along the Italian peninsula. The white areas are areas above 2,000 meters we excluded from the modeling. So having now a look at the variable importances, because the variable importance tell us something about the site preferences. Here we have the two modeling approaches, so Maxent on the top and TreeNet on the bottom. Here we have the early Neanderthals on the left-hand side and the classic Neanderthals on the right-hand side. So you see that the preferences, in yellow we have the climate preferences, in green strategic, and in blue the water-related preferences. What we can deduct from this diagram is that the classic Neanderthals seem to have more focus on the strategic aspects that are far more that are more selected in terms of the classic Neanderthals, whereas for the early Neanderthals there is a more preference on the climate-related issues. So that means even if you have a look at the Maxent over here, we have a larger part here in the climate-related parameters. So that means early Neanderthals seem to be more depending on climate issues concerning the site selection criteria, whereas the classic Neanderthals have more strategic aspects in the site selection. We validated the model also externally. So in this case, we collected all the sites that have no fossils, so sites without fossils, and plotted them on our map, and we get a fit of over 80%. So most of the points shown on the map fall into high or very high probability of site selection for, in this case, the classical Neanderthal sites. So coming to the anatomically modern humans, so on the left-hand side again, the diagram showing the site preferences of the classic Neanderthals. On the right-hand side now, the analysis for the anatomical modern humans. And as you see, we have also a quite large part of the water-related issues that play a role in the site selection. The climate also plays a big role, and we have also, but in less, so smaller amount over here, the strategic aspect. However, what we can deduct from the diagrams is that the site selection criteria for both are quite similar. So anatomical modern humans as well as classic Neanderthals show all three categories. So the climate, the strategic, as well as the water-related issues. And here we had also looked into the single parameters listed over here, and it seems that they are quite similar. So this is also then further issue we have to have a look at into in future concerning the different parameters that have been selected and their relation to the site selection. So coming to the results, so what we set up was a unique spatial data set for Neanderthals and the modern humans from 30,000 to 200,000 BP. The stochastic analysis yield information about variable importance and thus about the factors and processes relevant for the site selection. Both models yield similar site preferences. TreeNet, as I've shown, outperforms Maxent, especially in the classified variables or in the Neanderthals. And the internal model validation showed good results, especially for the TreeNet model. So this is much better than the Maxent model. However, also an external validation showed quite good results for the classical Neanderthals. So as I have shown, 80% fit, more than 80% fit. Concerning the site selection criteria, so we have shown that the early Neanderthals have a higher climatic dependency, obviously, because we have more parameters describing the climatic issues in the diagrams. Classic Neanderthals show more specific site selection criteria, so they also took into account the strategic aspects, which for the early Neanderthals play a minor role. And last but not least, modern humans so quite similar preferences as the classical Neanderthals. So coming to the outlook, we have to identify additional Neanderthal and modern human sites with fossils and also with artifacts in order to increase the significance of the model. So the more data we have, the better the models be, or the better the statistics can be. We have to incorporate additional variables, for example, derived from human sensing, also describing the environment in terms of the surface properties. And what we also like to do is differentiation in specific time slices between the 200,000 and 20,000 BP to take into account the different climatic phases that we have within that time slice over here. So thank you very much.